I was put on the spot by an alien woman. My honest answer shocked her. The question came out of nowhere, cutting through the diplomatic reception like a knife. Commander Jake Morrison barely had time to set down his glass before Ambassador Lyra of the Thalan Confederacy fixed him with those unsettling violet eyes and asked the one thing humans had been avoiding for 3 months. Why do you fight when you know you cannot win? The entire hall went silent. Delegates from a dozen species froze mid-conversation. Jake could feel every alien eye in the room turning toward him, waiting. The Thalan were the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, and Lyra was not just asking out of curiosity. She was testing him, testing all of humanity. Jake's superior officer, Captain Linda Martinez, stood across the room. Her expression screamed at him to deflect, to give some rehearsed political answer. The brass had briefed them all. Do not antagonize the Thalan. Do not give them reasons to see us as a threat. Play nice. But something in Lyra's face told Jake she was tired of political answers. She wanted truth, and she had chosen this public moment to demand it. 3 months ago, the Thalan had witnessed human marines holding a mining colony against a Kreshnar raiding fleet. 40 humans against 3 warships. The colony had been deemed indefensible. Command had ordered evacuation. The Marines had ignored the order. They had held for 6 hours before Thalan reinforcements arrived. 32 Marines died, but they had saved 8,000 colonists. The Thalan could not understand why. Jake met Lyra's gaze. The ambassador stood nearly 7 feet tall, her silver skin catching the light. Her species had evolved as apex predators on a death world. They understood strength, understood survival. What they did not understand was sacrifice that seemed to defy logic. Because giving up is worse than dying, Jake said. The words hung in the air. Several alien delegates made sounds of confusion. Lyra's expression did not change, but her head tilted slightly, a gesture Jake had learned meant intense interest. Explain, she said. Her voice carried an edge now. You had ships. You could have evacuated. Your deaths accomplished nothing your survival would not have. The Thalan fleet arrived regardless. Your sacrifice was meaningless. Those 32 Marines would disagree, Jake replied. He could feel sweat on his neck, but kept his voice level. They bought time. They kept families together. Kids got to see their parents again because of those 6 hours. That is not meaningless. Your species is primitive, Lyra continued, and several delegates gasped at the bluntness. You have limited resources, limited technology. Every trained soldier represents years of investment, yet you waste them on emotional calculations that provide no strategic advantage. It is inefficient. It is irrational. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Captain Martinez was making subtle cutting motions with her hand, telling him to shut up, to back down. Every bit of his training told him to defer to the ambassador's superior rank and power. But he thought about Danny Wright, who had thrown himself on a plasma grenade to save his squad. He thought about Maria Santos, who had stayed at her turret even as fire consumed the bunker around her. Maybe that is what makes us human, Jake said quietly. We are not efficient. We are not perfectly logical. But we are here, and we are not going anywhere, no matter how many times you call us primitive. The room erupted. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. Captain Martinez looked like she wanted to strangle him. But Lyra raised one long-fingered hand, and the room fell silent instantly. The Thalan commanded that kind of respect. She stepped closer to Jake, looming over him. Her eyes seemed to pierce right through him. For a long moment she said nothing. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. He had just insulted the most powerful being in the sector. He had probably started a diplomatic incident. He might have gotten Earth-sanctioned, or worse. Then Lyra did something no one expected. She smiled. It was not a human smile, too sharp and too wide, but it was unmistakably amusement. I was told your species values honesty, she said. I did not believe it until now. Come with me, Commander Morrison. We have much to discuss. She turned and walked toward a private chamber off the main hall. Jake looked at Captain Martinez, who seemed torn between relief and horror. She nodded once, sharply. He followed the ambassador, acutely aware that he had just changed something fundamental. He only hoped it was for the better. The private chamber was sparse, designed for the Thalan aesthetic. Cold metal walls, minimal furniture. Lyra gestured for Jake to sit, then paced slowly, her movements fluid and controlled. Jake remained standing. Something told him sitting would be a mistake right now. Your answer troubles me, Lyra said. Not because it was wrong, but because it was right in ways I did not anticipate. She stopped pacing and faced him directly. The Thalan have ruled this sector for 6,000 of your years. We have absorbed 47 species into our confederacy. We understand power. We understand hierarchy. We do not understand why a species that possesses neither continues to challenge forces that should crush them. Because we have to, Jake said simply. We do not have the luxury of backing down. Earth is all we have. We cannot retreat to another star system. We cannot call on ancient alliances. When someone threatens us, we fight. That is the only choice we understand. Lyra's eyes narrowed. The Kreshnar threatened your mining colony. They are raiders, parasites. The Thalon would have dealt with them eventually. Your Marines did not need to die. Eventually is a word that means nothing when your family is in danger, Jake replied. Those Marines had wives, husbands, children on that colony. They knew the odds. They fought anyway. Not because command ordered it. They ignored the evacuation order. They fought because it was their choice. Choice, Lyra repeated, as if tasting the word. You believe your species' willingness to die for lost causes is a choice? It is the only choice that matters, Jake said. He could feel the weight of the conversation shifting, becoming something larger than himself. Look, I am not a philosopher. I am a soldier. But I know what I have seen. I have watched people with nothing stand against impossible odds because they chose to. That is what humanity is. We are not the strongest. We are not the smartest. But we choose to stand, and that choice is everything. The predator that hesitates dies hungry. We are taught from birth that survival is paramount. Victory is paramount. Everything else is weakness to be called. To move to a viewport showing the starfield beyond. Your species defies this. You choose death over survival. You call it honor. We call it extinction waiting to happen. Maybe, Jake admitted, but we are still here. For now, Lyra said. She turned back to him. Do you know why I asked you that question in the reception hall? Why I put you specifically on the spot? Jake shook his head. He had been wondering about that. There were dozens of higher-ranking officers present. Admiral Grant himself was there. Why target a mere commander? Because I've read your file, Lyra said. 3 years ago you held a listening post against a Vorlon assault. You were the only survivor. You held for 14 hours, alone, because you believed reinforcements would come. They did not. You were found half dead, still at your post. Your after-action report said you would do it again. I wanted to know if that was propaganda or truth. It was truth, Jake said. The post had to be held. Intel from that location was crucial for the fleet positioning. I could not abandon it. You could have, Lyra corrected. You had numerous opportunities to flee. The Vorlan offered you surrender twice. You refused both times. Why? Jake thought about those 14 hours. The constant bombardment, the failing life support, the growing certainty that no one was coming. He had been terrified every second. But he had stayed. Because someone had to, he said finally. If I ran, the data would have been lost. Ships would have died, maybe thousands of people. I could not live with that choice, so I chose the other one. Even though it meant your death, Lyra said. I did not die, Jake pointed out. Pure chance, Lyra said. You survived by random luck, not design. Your choice was still to die. My choice was to do my duty, Jake said. The outcome was beyond my control. All I could control was whether I stood or ran. I chose to stand. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that chilled Jake to his core. The Thalon Confederacy is facing a threat we cannot overcome with strength alone. For the first time in 6,000 years, we may lose. That is why I'm here. That is why I needed to understand your species. She looked directly at him. We need allies who do not know how to quit. We need humans. Jake felt the floor shift beneath him. This was not a diplomatic reception. This was a recruitment. The most powerful empire in the galaxy was afraid of something, and they wanted humanity's help. What kind of threat are we talking about? Jake asked carefully. The kind that makes your mining colony standoff look like a schoolyard fight, Lyra said grimly. The kind that has already consumed 40 star systems on the rim. The kind that does not negotiate, does not retreat, and does not stop. We call them the nullifiers. They erase everything they touch. Planets, stars, civilizations, all reduced to base matter and void. How long do we have? Jake asked. They will reach human space in 8 months, Lyra said. They will reach Thalon core worlds in 18 months. We have been fighting them for 3 years. We are losing. She paused. We need soldiers who will hold impossible positions. We need a species that chooses to fight when fighting seems pointless. We need humanity's particular brand of insanity. Jake's mind raced. 8 months. Earth had no idea. Humanity had been so focused on establishing itself among the galactic community They had missed the apocalypse approaching. Why not tell Earth directly? Why approach me? Because your leaders will ask questions we cannot answer, Lyra said. They will want guarantees we cannot provide. They will debate and delay while the nullifiers advance. But you, Commander Jake Morrison, you are a man who makes decisions in the moment. You understand that sometimes action is more important than perfect information. I am asking you to take a message to your superiors. I am asking you to convince them that this threat is real and that humanity must mobilize now. You are asking me to start a war, Jake said flatly. I am asking you to help us prevent the extinction of every sapient species in this sector, Lyra corrected. Including yours. The nullifiers do not care about your neutrality. They do not care about your primitive status. They will come, and they will erase you. The only question is whether you fight alongside allies or die alone. Jake thought about the Marines at the mining colony. He thought about his own lonely stand at that listening post. He thought about humanity's history, about every last stand and desperate defense that had defined his species. Earth had never been good at backing down from existential threats. The question was whether they would see this one coming in time. I will take your message, Jake said, but I cannot promise they will listen. Make them listen, Lyra said. Her voice carried an intensity that made Jake's skin prickle. Because if they do not, everything you fought to protect at that listening post, everyone those Marines died to save, will be erased. The nullifiers leave nothing behind. Not ruins, not memories, not even the atoms that formed your world. Just empty space where life used to be. Jake nodded slowly. He understood the weight she was placing on him. It was too much for one commander, too much for one conversation. But that had never stopped him before. When do we start? He asked. Now, Lyra said, I have a ship waiting. We will go to your Earth together. You will help me convince your leaders that this is not a Thalan trick or manipulation. This is survival, pure and simple. Can you do that? Jake thought about everything he had just learned. Part of him wanted to refuse, to say this was above his pay grade, but he thought about those violet eyes staring him down, about the test she had given him. She had not asked a diplomat or a politician. He had asked a soldier who understood what it meant to stand against impossible odds. Yes, Jake said, I can do that. Then we leave immediately, Lyra said. She moved toward the door, then paused. Commander Morrison, thank you for your honesty in the reception hall. It confirmed what I hoped about your species. You do not know when to quit. In the coming war, that may be the most valuable trait in the galaxy. She left the chamber. Jake stood alone for a moment, processing everything. Then he followed. Captain Martinez was waiting outside, her expression a mixture of fury and concern. What did you do? She hissed. I volunteered us for the end of the world, Jake said. Then he kept walking, following Lyra toward whatever came next. The Thalan ship was unlike anything Jake had seen before. Most human vessels were functional, cramped affairs designed for efficiency. The Thalan craft looked like a work of art, all flowing lines and seamless metal. But Jake could see the weapons ports, could sense the lethal power contained within that elegant frame. This was a warship pretending to be a yacht. Lyra led him through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt as they moved, the walls rippling with what Jake assumed was some kind of programmable matter. Other Thalan crew members watched him pass with undisguised curiosity. Humans were still a novelty in most galactic circles, primitive newcomers barely worth noticing, but these Thalan looked at him with something else. Respect, maybe, or fear. Your quarters, Lyra said, gesturing to a chamber. We will reach Earth in 72 hours. Use that time to prepare your arguments. Your leaders will need more than dire warnings. They will need data, projections, evidence. I will provide everything I can, but the presentation must come from you. They trust their own more than they trust us. I need to contact Earth Command, Jake said. They will want to know where I am. I have already sent word that you are accompanying me on a diplomatic mission, Lyra replied. Your Captain Martinez was most insistent about proper protocols. She paused. She also wanted me to tell you that if you embarrass Earth, she will personally throw you into a star. That sounds like her, Jake muttered. He entered the quarters, surprised by how spacious they were. Human-appropriate furniture had been provided, though it looked oddly out of place among the Thalan aesthetics. Rest, Lyra said. Tomorrow we will begin your briefing on the nullifiers. What you learn will not be pleasant, but you need to understand what is coming. She left. Jake sat on the edge of the bed, his mind still churning. 72 hours to prepare for the most important presentation of his life. 72 hours before he had to convince Earth's leaders to mobilize for a war they did not know existed, against an enemy they could not imagine. No pressure. Sleep did not come easily. Jake lay in the darkness, listening to the subtle hum of the ship's systems. Everything felt wrong. He was a combat officer, not a diplomat. He gave orders to squads, not speeches to world leaders. Lyra had made a mistake choosing him, but then he remembered her words. She had chosen him specifically because he understood what it meant to stand and fight. She needed someone who could communicate the urgency, who could make Earth's leaders understand that this was not politics or strategy, this was survival. Jake got up and accessed the terminal Lyra had shown him. The interface translated into English automatically, and he began reviewing the files she had left for him. What he saw made his blood run cold. The nullifiers were not like any enemy humanity had encountered. They were not invaders seeking resources or conquerors building empires. They were erasers, moving through space like a wave of absolute destruction. The images showed star systems before and after their passage. Before, thriving worlds full of life and civilization. After, nothing. Not dead worlds. Not ruins. Just empty space where planets used to orbit. Even the stars themselves seemed diminished, their light dimmer. The Thalen had first encountered them at the edge of their territory 3 years ago. A frontier colony simply vanished overnight. No distress call. No wreckage. Just gone. Thalen sent a battle group to investigate. The battle group never reported back. When a larger fleet arrived, they found nothing. No colony, no battle group, no debris, just a void where a solar system used to be. The pattern repeated. The nullifiers advanced slowly but unstoppably. The Thalen threw their might against them, and it meant nothing. Fleets disappeared, planets vanished. The greatest military power in the galaxy was being erased piece by piece, and they could not even identify what they were fighting. Jake read report after report, each one more disturbing than the last. The Thalen had tried everything. Conventional weapons, exotic particles, reality-bending technologies that sounded like science fiction. Nothing worked. The nullifiers absorbed every attack, every strategy. They learned and adapted. They could not be fought with strength alone. That was why Lyra had come looking for humanity. The Thalen had realized they needed something more than military power. They needed unpredictability. They needed chaos. They needed a species that did not fight by established rules, that made choices based on emotion and instinct rather than pure logic. They needed humans because humans were crazy enough to try things that should not work. Jake spent the next 70 hours immersed in the data. Lyra joined him periodically, answering questions and providing additional context. She seemed almost relieved to be talking about it openly. The Thalen command had kept the full extent of the threat classified, not wanting to cause panic. But Lyra believed secrecy would doom them. Humanity needed to know what was coming, and they needed to know now. How many species know about this? Jake asked during one session. The Thalen leadership and 3 client species who have already lost worlds to the nullifiers, Lyra said. Everyone else believes we are dealing with internal unrest or border skirmishes. The truth would cause mass panic, or mass mobilization, Jake countered, if everyone knew, if every species in the galaxy united against this threat. They would not unite, Lyra said flatly. Some would try to appease the nullifiers. Others would flee. Most would simply deny the threat until it reached their doorstep. The Thalen have seen it before. Species are predictable in their self-interest. But you think humanity is different. I think humanity is desperate enough to take chances others will not, Lyra said. You have nothing to lose and everything to prove. That makes you dangerous. It also makes you valuable. The ship emerged from faster-than-light travel 72 hours later, exactly as Lyra had predicted. Jake stood on the bridge, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. His homeworld looked fragile from this distance, a blue marble hanging in the black. Somewhere down there, 8 billion people lived their lives with no idea that extinction was approaching. Your world is beautiful, Lyra said quietly. She had joined him at the viewport. I have seen thousands of inhabited planets. Yours has something special, something worth fighting for. We think so, Jake said. He could see the orbital platforms, the defense satellites, the patrol ships. Earth's defenses looked impressive by human standards. Against the nullifiers, they would last minutes at best. The communication came through almost immediately. Earth Defense Command had tracked the Thalen ship the moment it appeared. They were demanding identification and explanation. Jake took a breath and opened the channel. Earth Defense Command, this is Commander Jake Morrison aboard the Thalen vessel Silent Approach. I am accompanied by Ambassador Lyra of the Thalen Confederacy. We request immediate landing clearance and emergency council with the Joint Chiefs. Priority Alpha. This is not a drill. There was a pause. Then a familiar voice came through. "Jake, this is Admiral Grant. What the hell is going on?" "Sir," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady, "we have a situation. The kind that makes first contact look like a minor diplomatic incident. I need you to assemble every world leader who can make it to Geneva in the next 6 hours. This cannot wait." Another pause, longer this time. Then Grant's voice, harder now. "Commander, you are asking me to mobilize the entire planetary government based on your word. You better have one hell of a reason." Jake glanced at Lyra. She nodded once, giving him permission. "Sir, we have 8 months before an extinction-level threat reaches Earth. The Thalan Confederacy has been fighting it for 3 years and losing. They need our help. We need to mobilize every resource we have, starting now." The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then Grant said, "You have landing clearance. Geneva in 6 hours. This better not be a waste of time, Commander." The signal cut. Jake let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, the gesture almost human. "Well done," she said. "Now comes the hard part, making them believe you." The landing was smooth, but the reception was anything but friendly. Jake and Lyra were escorted by armed soldiers the moment they stepped off the ship. Admiral Grant was waiting, his expression thunderous. Other officers flanked him, all looking like they wanted answers immediately. "Admiral," Jake said, saluting, "thank you for the expedited meeting." "Save it," Grant snapped. "You pull me out of a strategic planning session, you demand a global emergency council, and you bring an alien warship into Earth orbit without clearance. You have about 60 seconds to convince me this is not some elaborate prank or hostile action." "It is neither," Lyra said, her voice cutting through the tension. Her height and presence seemed to fill the entire hangar. "I am Ambassador Lyra of the Thalan Confederacy. I have come to offer Earth an alliance in the face of an existential threat that will reach your world in 8 months. Your Commander Morrison is here because I chose him to deliver this message. He has shown qualities your species will need in the coming war." "War?" Grant repeated. "The Thalan are declaring war on Earth?"
"No," Lyra said.
"We are warning you about a war that is already happening, one that will consume your world whether you fight or not. The choice is whether you face it alongside allies or alone." Grant looked at Jake. "This is real?" "Yes, sir," Jake said. "I have spent the last 72 hours reviewing their data. The threat is real, it is advancing, and we are in its path. The Thalan cannot stop it alone. They need help. They need us." "Why us?" another officer asked. "Earth is barely 50 years into space travel. What could we possibly offer?" "Unpredictability," Lyra said. "The ability to make choices that defy logic. Your species' tendency to fight when fighting seems pointless. These traits may seem like weaknesses. Against the nullifiers, they are advantages." She paused. "The Thalan have ruled through strength and logic for 6,000 years. It has made us powerful but predictable. The nullifiers counter everything we do because they understand how we think. But humans, you think differently. You make choices we cannot predict. That is what we need." The Geneva Emergency Council was the most intense 6 hours of Jake's life. Every major world leader attended via hologram or in person. Jake presented the data, explained the threat, fielded questions he barely knew how to answer. Lyra supported him, providing technical details and strategic assessments. But the emotional appeal, the urgency that came from Jake. He told them about the mining colony Marines. He told them about his own experience at the listening post. He made them understand that this was not theoretical, this was real, and it was coming. The choice was not whether to fight. The choice was whether to fight smart or die ignorant. The debate raged for hours. Some leaders argued for caution, for verification. Others wanted immediate action. A few accused the Thalan of manipulation, of trying to trick humanity into a war that was not theirs. Jake could feel the momentum slipping, could sense the council fracturing. Then something unexpected happened. The president of Earth stood and called for silence. She was an older woman, someone who had lived through humanity's first steps into the galactic community. She had seen Earth go from isolated to connected in less than a generation. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. "I have a question for Ambassador Lyra," she said. "If this threat is as dire as you claim, why come to Earth? Why not approach more established species? Species with actual military might?" Lyra met her gaze without flinching. "Because those species will not help," she said simply. "They will calculate odds and decide the cost is too high. They will retreat to their core worlds and hope the nullifiers stop before reaching them. Humans do not think that way. You do not calculate odds before deciding to act. You see danger and you charge at it. That is why I am here. That is not a flattering assessment of my species, the president said dryly. It is an honest one, Lyra replied. I have seen your history. You are a young species, barely a century past global conflict that nearly destroyed you. But you survived because you refused to quit. That is what I need. That is what this galaxy needs. The president was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Jake. Commander Morrison, you have been in combat. You have seen what war does. Do you believe this threat is worth mobilizing Earth's entire military? Jake did not hesitate. Yes, Madam President, I do. Even though we are outmatched? Even though we are primitive compared to species that have already failed? Especially because of that, Jake said. The Thalan are losing because they fight the way they have always fought. They are predictable. We are not. We do not have established doctrines or centuries of tradition. We can adapt. We can try things they would never consider. That is our advantage. Or it gets us killed faster, another leader interjected. Maybe, Jake admitted. But we die either way if we do nothing. At least this way we die fighting. At least this way we have a chance. The room fell silent. Everyone was looking at the president. She closed her eyes for a moment, and Jake could see the weight of the decision crushing down on her. She was being asked to commit Earth to a war they did not start, against an enemy they could not comprehend, with allies they barely trusted. Then she opened her eyes and said the words that would change everything. Earth will join the Alliance. We mobilize immediately. Admiral Grant, coordinate with Ambassador Lyra. I want our fleets ready to move within the month. She looked directly at Jake. Commander Morrison, you started this. You are going to see it through. You are hereby promoted to captain and assigned as Earth's liaison to the Thalan Confederacy. Congratulations, you just became the most important officer in human history. Jake felt the room spin. Captain Martinez would never let him hear the end of this. But he saluted and said, Thank you, Madam President. I will not let you down. Do not thank me yet, she said grimly. You have just signed us up for the impossible. Now you need to figure out how to achieve it. The meeting ended. Leaders departed with grim expressions and heavy hearts. Jake found himself alone with Lyra in a quiet corridor. The Thalan ambassador looked at him with something that might have been approval. You did well, she said. Better than I expected.
Your species will fight.
They will fight, Jake agreed. Whether we can win is another question. Winning is not the goal, Lyra said. Survival is. If we can hold the nullifiers long enough to understand them, to find a weakness, then we have a chance. That is all I am asking for. A chance? No pressure, Jake said, the words heavy with exhaustion. Lyra made a sound that might have been a laugh. You humans and your humor in the face of doom. It is disturbing and admirable in equal measure. Come, we have much work ahead. The nullifiers will not wait for us to be ready.